Hello, my name is Carmen Motta, and for my competition project, I decided to do lesson planning in humanities. I decided to craft and deliver my lesson plan to a group of 10th grade ELA students who were just wrapping up their unit on magical realism. First thing I decided to do was give a little introduction of myself and also an explanation as to why I was in their classroom. And the next thing I moved on to was Bloom's taxonomy, which they had been exposed to previously. However, I felt as though many of the students would most likely need a reminder, so I just kind of went through each of the stages with them and jogged their memories. And so I know you guys just ended your magical realism unit, and I'm here to kind of segue into the next unit you guys are in. You guys are reading Lord of the Flies right now, and you guys have just finished chapter 1, right? Yeah? Okay. And so I just kind of wanted to take a step back, and what we're doing today is kind of just connecting the two topics. But I'm going to show you guys a strategy that you can apply to almost any topic to make it maybe more interesting for yourself. And that strategy is Bloom's taxonomy, and I heard that you guys have made some questions for it for our seminar, if you guys remember that. And it's helpful in classrooms because it just really builds our learning. You can't get to the next step without learning how to do the step before it, right? So you can apply this to anything, and it'll make things make more sense. And one reason why I didn't like magical realism was because it didn't make sense. And I was really confused about my book and the symbolism. And I know you guys are reading Lord of the Flies, which does have a lot of symbolism. So if you can learn to adapt this to your learning, it'll make more sense to you. It won't be as boring. You might even like some of the aspects of the book or the assignments because you understand it. So that's how we'll use it today. We'll kind of see it at the top. I'll have the different levels as we go through the slides. And so here are our learning objectives. You can take a minute to kind of read these ones in your head. We're going to identify mostly the symbolism, how it impacts characters. We're going to apply magical realism skills to the book that you guys are reading. And we're going to use storyboarding techniques. So the next order of business was to make sure that we were all on the same page about what aspects make up magical realism and how we define magical realism. So I asked them to go around in their small table groups, and I told them to share one piece of magical realism, like one example, and also share out why that was an example so that the students could really just remember and understand what made that piece magical realism. The next thing I asked students to do was to think about the pros and cons of magical realism. And what I was trying to get the students to do here was to analyze how magical realism is effective as a genre. One technique that I used here was the think, pair, share technique. And I recently learned that giving students that first part, the thinking part, giving them time to actually come up with a response makes students much more responsive to sharing with their peers and sharing with their class or sharing with a partner. And without this given time, people don't really come up with a coherent answer. And a lot of teachers skip this step on accident, just really unknowingly, not realizing that they're not giving kids time to think.
So a con here is kind of limits the audience because it's more artistic and not as like mainstream, not something that like is really for everyone, but also being more artistic can also be a pro.
The next level of Bloom's taxonomy, I asked students to apply their knowledge of magical realism to their texts. Students discussed in small groups how the type of magic affected characters, how it did not, and what would happen to their stories and characters if the fantastical elements were removed.
Became more of like, it was like, oh yeah, I'll help my dad, I'll do this for him, I'll do that for him. But like before she was standoffish just like he was.
Yeah, but that's I get that part. What I'm saying is like in the short film now, like everything was portrayed like nothing out of the ordinary was going on. Like it was normal that she had a dumpling for a kid. That's what I meant.
But like what wasn't normal was a whole animal coming to her, standing in front of her, and they having some type of connection.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying was different.
That's what I'm saying.
That's why I was confused. I'm like, if you think Legendborn is like a full example,
But Legendborn is kind of like,
because like it's full magic. Like people,
but they had it. But they also had normal things which you gotta listen to. You know, people having normal conversations like us is a normal thing in a book. But when animals pop up and demonic little female stuff pop up, you're gonna be like, what? Like, where did that come from? And it's gonna make you look more into the book. It's reality. But like that helped them change over time. Different stuff they see makes them change, especially electrical. If she didn't know
She got used to the magic.
she didn't know nothing about it. So it brought her out to see and be able to do it.
The lesson had the whole class watching a short clip from the movie Encanto, and in this scene, it's called the casita. The house just kind of breaks all apart, and it happens because two of the characters, the grandma and the granddaughter, are fighting. And so, what I wanted students to do is to analyze using the following questions. I'm gonna watch a clip from Encanto, but I wanted to show you guys the questions I had first, so you can kind of think about them as we watch. We're going to talk about the magical elements in the clip. How does the magical element affect how the characters act? Do the characters react to the magic in a peculiar way? And what message is the author trying to send? So we play the clip now, and then we'll come back to these questions later.
They're trying to show how all this infighting is just tearing their household apart by showing the symbolism of the house being broken. Yeah, that's fair. That's fair.
The student's final task was to reach the last level of Bloom's taxonomy: create. I designed an assignment where students got a blank storyboard template. The student then chooses their favorite pet or person or character or really anything that's special to them, and they put that character in place or in conjunction with the other characters in the story in the first chapter of Lord of the Flies. Students were then asked to pick one or more symbols from the text and analyze how that character of their choosing and the surrounding characters interact with that symbol. Behind letting students choose their own pet or character or a special person was really derived from my experience with the magical realism unit when I was in 10th grade. So with this, I thought if I let students have creative freedom over some aspects of the assignment, they would be more engaged and more likely to complete the work. I would talk about Hannah, and I talk about her as a person, and then I would talk about how the events of the book altered maybe what she would do or say in this situation, right? Put her in the shoes of maybe another character, or add her into the story with all the other characters. And then I would talk about what the conch shell is as a symbol. While reviewing all of the storyboards the students submitted, I noticed three main groups of students and the quality of their work. While some individuals chose not to put much effort into their assignment, other kids made a great effort to complete the storyboard and include all of the required details. Lastly, some of the kids were in the middle of both of these groups, where it seems they had tried a decent amount, but they may have not been as engaged in the lesson as I had hoped or were possibly confused on the assignment. I noticed that kids that asked for any type of clarification did better on their assignment than kids who did not reach out for help or were unresponsive when I offered help. One thing most students did really well was reflecting about how they felt about magical realism and what its pros and cons were. For example, one student explains that they like to read magical realism books because it can explain different types of themes with objects, which can feel more representative of a story. Another student described magical realism as something that can articulate a vision. I thought this was a great way to put it. Even though at times many of the students may have been confused on what the author is trying to convey in a story, simply understanding the vision behind using an object or an idea as a symbol is a great kickstart for kids struggling with magical realism texts. One thing that made me very happy to include in my lesson was simply asking for the opinions of students. I wish more of my teachers would ask for feedback or the opinions of the content we learned. Some feedback I received from students was that they appreciated how I pushed students to share, how I gave them creative freedom, and how the lesson was overall enjoyable. Some students asked for a more in-depth explanation of the assignment, however, other students asked for a shorter explanation of the content. Though these sides conflict, the overall ideas I'm taking away from their comments is that some students are at different stages of learning, so that it's important to find a middle ground while still having work that is challenging available to the students, such as an extended rubric, as well as leaving room open to questions about the assignments and doing more check-in with students on their understanding of the assignment. I also got a note to speak a little louder, which I will definitely work on implementing in my future endeavors. Thank you for listening and following along with my lesson plan. I'm so excited to be here today. Thank you.